what is going on in real estate as of March 26th, 2020. Well, I showed a few places earlier in the week to one client. I wore gloves, I wore special house shoes, and we walked around with lysol cloths, or I walked around and I'm the one who turned on lights and such. Client didn't touch anything, so we're being extra careful with any home we look at. In case you're curious, that's what realtors are doing now, most of them. I can't talk for everyone, but I expect everyone's being extremely careful. So what is going on right now? There's still multiple offers. I showed 3 homes in the last week that sold in the last couple of days with multiple offers, anywhere from, let's say, 1% over asking to upwards to close to 10% over asking that they sold for. And this is in, say, the slightly above average price of an Ottawa, say, let's say 550 to the $900,000 range. So homes are still selling now. There are people that need to move. There are people that need homes. There are people that have already sold their homes in the Ottawa area or elsewhere, and they are coming to Ottawa, and they're not going to stay at the Chateau Laurier. They're not going to stay at most hotels. I don't know if any hotels are open. They need to buy a home, and they're looking right now, and they are stressed, I'm sure. Now, as far as my buyer clients go, I do have some buyer clients that are, I would say, slightly stressed. And if you're watching this, you know who you are, but nobody that has to move absolutely in the next 30 to 60 days. So we'll leave it at that. I don't currently have any listings on MLS. I do have some upcoming listings, and if you're one of my listing clients, I do appreciate your business, so thank you. And we will revisit based on what's going on with COVID at that time, whether we delay. What's best for you as a seller. It might be that, you know, in a month's time, things will pick up a bit as far as, open up a bit as far as what we're allowed to do and what we should be doing with clear moral conscience in the business world and the real estate world. But right now, unless you are desperate to sell or desperate to buy, it's probably better to wait. What are the common questions that I hear? So what's going on in the market? Why is this crazy seller's market? What's it going to turn into? Well, I think we'll find, statistically, we're probably still in a seller's market because people aren't listing and homes are still selling. So if we define a seller's market as less than 4 months of inventory, which means if all the homes that were on MLS prior to let's call it the shutdown starting, if they were all sold based on the amount of sales this month and next month, say in less than 4 months, then we'd still be in a seller's market. I think we're going to still see that we're statistically in a seller's market. I also expect a lot of buyers will completely stop. No more action, no more looking, and that's probably the right thing to do if you're not in a big rush. This will affect all kinds of businesses, but just about all the businesses in Canada are being affected now in one way or another, whether it's real estate, restaurants, any type of service business, you know, I don't know, masseuse, you know, non-registered healthcare type workers, house cleaning, you know, high tech, they're all working from home. Maybe they're getting paid, but maybe the company's being affected by, you know, maybe not in the short term, but the medium term they'll be affected. Everyone's being affected. You're not alone. Everybody should have some bit of apprehension of the future, but maybe it's also an opportunity, and maybe we needed a little breather. And frankly, I think it's interesting the time we have at home with our families, and the time we're spending online looking at other people talking about things. I'm just going to turn off my record player here. I left it running. Okay, so now is just a good time to think, a good time to talk, and a good time to ponder the option depending on the options, depending on what may come in the next month, the next 3 months, next 6 months. So there's probably no arguing that we're heading into a recession. We're probably within a few weeks of it being an official recession, depending on what your definition. What's going to happen after things open up? Are we going to get a second wave of health issues, the coronavirus, or whatever you like to call it, COVID-19? There may be a second wave. Frankly, I'm not a healthcare worker. I can't comment on these things. It sounds like, it'll go through Canada and then maybe it'll end up back in, throughout the world, depending on the temperature and the humidity and the people and the way they, whether they do social distancing, which I actually prefer. How about spatial distancing or just distancing? The key is that we're not touching and kissing and sharing the virus through mechanical means. But so back to that, what's going to happen? How are we going to get through this, and what's going to happen after? What I'll tell you is the last big shock that I was part of was the 2008 financial crisis, which in Ottawa, basically we saw it starting right at the start of the last quarter of 2008. So let's say September, October, things started. When that happened, Ottawa real estate statistically almost stopped. People just said, nope, I'm waiting. I don't know what's going on. I'm really afraid. And what happened was that the markets just stopped for 6 months, basically. We went through the first quarter of 2009, so basically January to March, which are normally relatively slow times anyways, but our numbers were down year over year and for the average on that time frame. And but once we hit April, probably, I don't remember exactly the weather in April 2009, it probably warmed up just like usual. The sun came out, the ice melted, and people got more comfortable and they took a deep breath and they said, you know what? Ottawa wasn't affected as much as other parts of the country, or certainly the US, when it comes to housing with the banking crisis. So 2009 turned into a record year for number of sales. Up to that point, through MLS in Ottawa, it was a record year in 9 months. Basically, very little sold in the first quarter, and then it went gangbusters for 3 solid quarters. There was a backlog of buyers, a backlog of sellers, and everyone was ready to go. The weather was nice. We'd all held our breath for 6 months, and things just went crazy. So that's a little over 10 years ago, and that's one situation. It didn't involve a pandemic. So what's going to happen this time? You know what? Frankly, I think people are going to take some more time. They're going to think about their lives. They're going to think about, there's nothing like sitting around in your house for days on end. I know we're all trying to be productive, but you still have more time to think. You're not running around for any kind of sports. Maybe you're going for a jog, but you're not taking the kids to hockey or playing hockey or soccer or gymnastics or whatever. Everybody is staying relatively close to home. Maybe you're going for a walk or 2 every day, get a little bit of exercise. Anyways, people have more time to think. So I think, frankly, once this seems to pass for the health scare, there is probably more than a 50% chance that we head into a very busy market for a few months at least. And then perhaps after that, it'll slow down a bit once we get caught up with the backlog, which there is considerable. Even without the pandemic, there was a backlog of buyers for the Ottawa market. That's why we've seen the excessive price increases. So what is going to happen? I expect, if the pandemic flows through and continues and Canada is relatively healthy, let's say in 4 months, Ottawa will go back into a very busy real estate market, and I expect it'll go later into the year this year, depending on how long the slowdown for the pandemic lasts. Usually we'll slow down when it starts, snowing. Nobody wants to move in the winter in general. But I think it'll go longer than usual into the late into this year, perhaps even over Christmas this year. Who knows? And then maybe we'll have a little bit of balance. And I think a bit of that balance will come from people reassessing now what they want to do with their future, which will help pull back the market a bit. But because of the excessive, the increase in demand that was not satiated now and for the last year and a half or so, I think we will be very busy for a while once health is cleaned up. Pandemic seems to have passed. Okay, so what else can I talk about? You know what? There's all kinds of stories. There's like stuff everywhere, you know, pandemic this, pandemic that. I believe you can see this story here. This is on moneysense.ca. When was it written? 25th. That was yesterday. All right. Blah, 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 blah. We're talking about, you know, flattening the curve. How many times have you heard that? We did have a very, very busy winter for real estate. Here we go. There are still those who need to buy and sell right now, such as those who have already sold their homes and are on a time crunch to buy a new one. I talked about that earlier. These are highly motivated buyers and sellers, okay? And those are the people that are still in the market. They are nervous, and if their house is sold, they're coming in with they know how much money they, in theory, have in their pocket, and they're ready to move forward. So if your house is going or is on the market now, you may have even more of a benefit than the people who listed a month ago. That's my wife calling me to say breakfast is ready, which is nice of her, hey? And what else did I want to say? Yeah, here we go. Those who don't have urgent sales, urgent real estate needs will most likely stay on the sidelines for now as the situation evolves. So I'm going to go back to Ottawa in 2008 for a second. So I look at this as like kind of a social experiment. Ottawa is a high tech, but it's mostly a government city. So a lot of people will move here, whether as new Canadians or new to Ottawa for jobs. They'll come for high tech, perhaps some other ones, or government. A very high proportion are government. And why does somebody come to government? They want to serve their country. That's great. But also, often they're looking for guaranteed pay, guaranteed job for most likely a lifetime, and guaranteed support, healthcare, etc., pension. They're looking for the guarantee. So the person looking for the guarantee and the safe route will most likely go to the sidelines unless they are pressured to do something. So those are the sideline people, and I believe there's a high proportion of those people who are looking to buy that may wait on the sidelines. Maybe they're renting now, maybe they're coming to Ottawa in the summer. You know, maybe they'll rent for a while if you can find a tenancy, an open tenancy. But, you know, we'll talk about that maybe in another talk. So there will be a lot of people that stay, but there's already a backlog of people that need homes, like I said earlier. Social distancing, it's just actual distancing. How do we show homes? I talked about that a bit earlier. I might do a whole video on how we might show homes. And again, I'm not a doctor. Don't know any more than you do about how this coronavirus or COVID-19 or whatever you want to call it is passed and transmitted between humans. But we can be very, very careful. And the same with listings. If your home is to be listed, do you want strangers coming in your house? Well, if you need to sell, maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you go stay at a healthy friends or family members for the listing period. Certainly, if your home is selling during the pandemic, you will want your listing brokerage and realtor to take exceptional precautions with respect to that, as well as the realtors that are showing the home. And that can be arranged. And it is being expanded, you know, every day. Realtors are talking about better ways to do this. Whether it's just don't show the home, which in some cases is appropriate depending on the clients, but there are people that need to buy and there are people that need to sell. The market will bounce back. I believe it will, unless this is some type of doomsday scenario, which I don't think anybody is expecting. Okay, we don't care about the GTA right now. Okay, well, I think that's enough for now, and I'm going to stop. Have a great day.